Discover the incredible transformation behind my dad's shocking ultimatum. Attend my sister's wedding or get lost forever. Jake barely noticed his hands were shaking as he tightened the last bolt of the engine he had been working on all afternoon. In the heart of the little Midwestern town where he had spent every hour of the last decade, family meant everything, but his heart was heavy. His father's ultimatum echoed relentlessly in his mind. Attend your sister's wedding next month, or don't bother coming home again. It felt like a punch to the gut. How could he reconcile the responsibility and loyalty expected of him with his suppressed dream of teaching? The sound of the wrench clattering to the ground snapped him back to the grease-stained reality surrounding him, the dreams he'd buried beneath layers of oil and grime. But all those late nights at the garage had distracted him from the truth that clawed at his conscience. Memories surged. The afternoons he spent helping Lily and her friends with math. The satisfaction he felt when their eyes lit up with understanding. Teaching had been his passion, but reality's grip felt suffocating. Bills, responsibilities, adulthood had smothered his aspirations, and now here he was, trapped in a life that might never lead to fulfillment. As the weight of the ultimatum laid heavy in his chest, resentment curled like smoke at the edge of his thoughts. What if he refused to play along with their narrative, this perfect wedding hogging the spotlight? He knew his sister was struggling under the monumental expectations of family ideals. Jake could see the cracks in her smile widen with every forced family dinner, the pressure more palpable than any wrench in his toolbox. And yet the fear of disappointing his father paralyzed him. What would happen to Lily when he chose himself over the family? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Would speaking up lead to losing everything he loved? Jake's hands trembled on the tools, a toxic cocktail of fear and frustration building within him. Suddenly, the door swung open to reveal Lily, her expression fraught with a mix of desperation and exhaustion. He rushed to meet her, but instead of comfort, he felt a churning dread. I can't keep up with this, she admitted, her voice cracking, as if the very fabric of their family was about to unravel. As they sat, sharing their fears, the tension morphed into something visceral. Could he stand by while she struggled? The silence hung between them, so thick it could be sliced with a knife. With every tick of the clock, the wedding loomed closer, an all-consuming storm ready to sweep them both under. As the day approached, Jake's thoughts spiraled. He wrestled with the looming ultimatum, knowing that the choice he made on that fateful day could change everything. The true torment lay in the uncertainty. Would confronting their father's expectations destroy them or finally set them free? The stakes rose dangerously, and as Jake faced the precipice of the wedding day, he knew instinctively that the moment to choose was fast approaching. Teetering on the brink of chaos and revelation, Jake spent the following days caught in an emotional whirlwind, his usual rhythms disrupted by a spiraling anxiety that left him sleepless. Every clank of metal became a reminder. Every minute spent in the garage felt like wasted time. The rhythmic hum of the engines drowned out deeper whispers of ambition long forgotten. The tension in the air was palpable, a stifling atmosphere that pressed heavily on his chest. One evening, after closing the garage and letting the last of the evening sunlight filter through the dust-coated windows, he sat down in the office corner where he once dreamed of lesson plans and classroom interactions. He glanced at the walls adorned with the welding diagrams he used to instruct apprentices, a bitter irony since he had neglected his true calling for so long. The dullness of the garage felt suffocating, stifling the passion he used to feel when he envisioned guiding students towards their futures. Lily deserves a brother who supports her, he muttered to himself, wrestling with the notion of disappointment. But what about his own desires? Was it selfish to want to pursue his passion? The question gnawed at him as days bled into nights. Determination slowly began to simmer beneath the layers of uncertainty. He turned to the one source of sanity amidst the chaos of family obligations, his mother. Seeking her wisdom was a leap he had previously avoided, as if it required a validation he feared he wouldn't receive. But deep down he knew she could provide clarity, a glimpse into possibilities. That Saturday afternoon, He made his way to the kitchen, where the aroma of fresh cookies wafted through the air. His mother, Mrs. Reynolds, was deeply engrossed in her culinary ritual. "Jake, honey, you're home early," she exclaimed, her voice warm and inviting. "I need to talk," he said, his tone more earnest than he intended. As he pulled up a chair across from her, she looked at him intently, the gleam of understanding evident in her eyes. "You're troubled about the wedding?" "It's not just about the wedding, Mom. It's everything. I want to be there for Lily, but I can't ignore what I really want. Teaching. It's been on my mind for too long." Each word came spilling out, raw and unfiltered, as he realized he'd been holding back for far too long. Mrs. Reynolds wiped her hands on a dish towel, her expression shifting to one of compassion tinged with encouragement. "You've always had a gift for teaching, Jake. I remember how you used to explain math to Lily's friends in a way that lit them up. You can't bury that part of yourself for the sake of pleasing others." Her words struck a chord, rippling through him with renewed resolve. "But what if I disappoint Dad? What if I lose him for good? There's a difference between standing your ground and shutting the door on family. You can be supportive without sacrificing your dreams. Show them your passion. Sometimes love can be tough." Sitting quietly, Jake contemplated his mother's perspective. The fear of losing his family was still daunting, but she had opened a crack in the armor that encased his heart. He could envision a future where he could blend loyalty and ambition, teaching during the day, and providing for his family at night. As he left the house that day, he felt a shift within himself, an awakening to possibilities previously invisible. The racing thoughts of the wedding morphed into a focal point of action rather than dread. Conviction crystallized as he walked towards his car. He would need to prepare himself for the confrontation. The rehearsal dinner loomed just days away, a stage set for his decision. Would he confront the ultimatum? The moment to voice his dreams was drawing closer. Jake knew he would need to break free from the past, but was uncertain how it would impact the family he held dear. The gnawing question echoed. Would following his heart expose the cracks in their unity, or reshape them into something stronger? Jake had begun to realize he was not just a mechanic, he was a creator of futures. And in that moment he grasped an essential truth. Perhaps to rise, he needed to break apart the very things that tethered him. With the rehearsal dinner edging closer, Jake felt an undercurrent of dread and anticipation churn within him. Each passing day weighed heavily on his shoulders, filled with the looming specter of confrontation and the burden of his unvoiced aspirations. The memories of teaching were vivid in his mind, the light in his students' eyes, the moments of understanding when complex ideas suddenly clicked. Yet, each remembrance clashed with the obligations he felt toward Lily and the family tradition he was to uphold. That evening, he took a walk through the neighborhood, the fading light painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He inhaled the crisp air, attempting to tether his racing thoughts. This was a familiar routine, one he had used to clear his mind before. However, tonight it felt different. The houses, the trees, even the sidewalk seemed to be urging him toward his truth, toward the life he had stifled for far too long. He paused by a park, where children played and laughter mingled with echoes of shouts and cheers. It pulled at his heart, reminding him of his own childhood dreams, the spirit of exploration he had once embodied. But he had veered onto a path of survival, not passion. In that fleeting moment, clarity surged. It was time to confront not only his father but also the expectations that had amassed like a shadow over him. As he made his way back home, his mind spun with potential responses to his father's expectations. His heart raced not only at the thought of voicing his ambitions but also at the possibility of rejection. Years of adhering to the unspoken rule of family loyalty had molded a version of Jake that felt increasingly inauthentic. Yet, he understood that true loyalty meant being true to oneself, a lesson his mother had instilled deeply in him. The following morning brought with it an introspective calm. Jake found himself absorbed in the quiet of the garage, tools neatly organized and the familiar sense of oil and metal enveloping him. A resolve began to blossom. He would not rehearse his confrontation but rather engage in an honest conversation. It required a delicate balance, neither dismissing his father's expectations nor compromising his own desires. Later that day, he brewed a cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen table, the light streaming through the window illuminating his mother's old teaching manuals stacked beneath a pile of unopened bills. They reminded him that the past could create a foundation, not a cage. Jake resolved to review potential courses, a night class, perhaps something to put him back on the teaching path amidst family responsibilities. As evening descended, the time arrived for the confrontation. Jake felt his heartbeat quicken, each pulse echoing the significance of the moment. He found his father in the living room, engrossed in a sports game. It was the ideal backdrop for a discussion steeped in tension and tradition. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Dad?" he began, his voice steady yet soft enough to convey the tentative nature of this discussion. "What's on your mind, Jake?" His father's gaze shifted, concern painting his features as he turned away from the screen. "I need to talk about the wedding and my future," Jake said, each word deliberate as he braced for the fallout of his revelation. The anticipation of what lay ahead felt electrifying, a force both invigorating and terrifying. The room stilled, an invisible barrier forming between adherence to expectations and the breath of liberation. Jake was acutely aware that this moment could lead to a pivotal transformation. The time had come to face the truths he had long silenced. But would he find support or pushback? In the silence that enveloped them, Jake sensed a shift, both inside himself and within the realm of family dynamics, waiting to unfold. The stakes were high, but so were the possibilities for a future that embraced authenticity. Would his father understand, or would this moment shatter their bond? The tension was palpable, a thin veil between hope and apprehension as Jake prepared himself for whatever came next. The silence in the room stretched like taffy, each second elongated by Jake's mounting anxiety. He had laid the groundwork. Now the moment was here, raw and imminent. His father's features twisted in confusion, the flicker of concern solidifying into something unyielding. "Your future?" His father's voice was measured, like a dam holding back a flood. "What do you mean by that? We're supposed to focus on the wedding." Jake swallowed hard, fear mingling with defiance. "Dad, it's not just about the wedding." The words stumbled out, packed with years of pent-up sentiment. "I can't just step into a role I didn't choose. I want to teach again." His father's brow furrowed as he digested this new reality. "You always had your reasons for leaving that behind. It's a tough world out there. Teaching, it's not stable." The dismissal hung in the air, a stark contrast to Jake's yearning for something deeper. "I know it's not stable," Jake retorted, the words sharper than intended, "but it's what I love." His father shifted in his seat, the game forgotten, a stalemate brewing in the atmosphere. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Jake. And we've discussed this. Family comes first. You promised Lily you'd take over the shop." Jake's heart raced. "I didn't realize that meant giving up everything else that makes me." The failure to explain the profound dissonance between their lives stung. There had been a time when he believed he could blend both worlds. But now they felt irreconcilable. Jake. The singular use of his name from his father's lips was both a tool and an anvil, unfamiliar and weighty. "If you bring this up now, at the wedding, it's not about the wedding," he interrupted, voice trembling. "This is about my life. I can't live in a shadow of what everyone expects me to be. I want to inspire others to feel that fire again." He gestured toward his mother's teaching manuals and the passion he once held dear. Jake held his breath, struggling against the fear of a different kind of silence, that of disapproval from the man he had long put on a pedestal. Would they shatter in this moment of truth? "Do you really think you can do this?" his father asked finally, voice thick with skepticism tempered by a hint of curiosity. "I know I can," Jake asserted, a spark igniting within him. "I've been thinking about taking some classes to refresh my credentials. I could teach part-time, start small while still helping out at the shop." The room was charged with unspoken words. Jake's heart pounded as he held his father's gaze, searching for a glimmer of acceptance or at least comprehension. But his father's expression remained inscrutable, a defensive wall built from years of familial expectation. "I can't say I support this completely," his father replied, the flicker of vulnerability betraying the stoicism he usually wore like armor. "But I will think about it." Hope and uncertainty twisted inside Jake, but he felt a glimmer of relief. The reality was he was no longer the child needing approval. He was shaping his own path, however daunting that undertaking seemed. As Jake walked out, the cool air enveloped him like a balm. He realized that each step away from conformity felt liberating, a stir toward authenticity that urged him into the future rather than the past. But with his father's silence looming behind him, Jake felt a new weight settle on his shoulders. He knew this was merely the beginning. The conversation with his father was just one chapter of a much larger narrative that awaited him. What would his father ultimately decide? Would he find the strength to advocate for his passion amidst the familial expectations he had long adhered to? Doubts crept in, but beneath them was a resolute determination. He would step forward into the unknown. Now more than ever, he understood that the real journey had only just begun, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The weight of his father's uncertainty pressed down on him like a leaden cloak. As he stepped into the cool evening air, Jake inhaled deeply, attempting to expunge the remnants of fear that clung to him. Taking a moment to gather his thoughts, he realized that this was not merely a conflict with his father. It was a pivotal point in his life, a moment laced with potential for growth and change. The street bustled ahead, the faint laughter of children playing against the backdrop of a setting sun. It felt surreal, juxtaposed with the turmoil within him. Walking past the vibrant storefronts, Jake's mind reeled with a blend of excitement and apprehension. Teaching wasn't just a career choice, it represented his very identity, the part of himself he had hidden for so long. That night he lay awake, the shadows of his bedroom morphing with the ebb and flow of his thoughts. Images of classrooms filled with eager faces flashed before him. The certainty he had felt about rediscovering his passion began to solidify into a plan. He could enroll in workshops, perhaps even reach out to his former colleagues who might be part of the foundation he could build upon. The spark of inspiration ignited within him a renewed sense of purpose. The next morning Jake took a leap of faith. He texted his former mentor, Miss Patterson, a woman whose influence had initially carved the path he had chosen to veer away from. He hesitated before pressing send, anxiety latching onto the indecision in his gut. What if she didn't respond? What if she had moved on? Minutes later his phone buzzed. "Jake, I was just thinking about you. How are you?" The response was immediate and warm, the right antidote to his trepidation. They arranged to meet for coffee, a chance for him to lay bare his aspirations and perhaps receive some guidance. As the day of their meeting approached, Jake prepared meticulously. He revisited his teaching philosophy, inflated his confidence with reminders of past successes in the classroom, and rehearsed how best to articulate his newfound ambitions. But as the time approached, doubt clawed at him. What if she saw him as someone who had given up, someone lacking resolve? The coffee shop buzzed with patrons, the atmosphere lively yet suffocating. He sipped his drink slowly, the warmth contrasting the chill of his nerves. When Miss Patterson entered, her presence felt grounding. They exchanged pleasantries, but he could sense a thrill beneath the surface. The conversation unfolded, weaving in laughter and light-hearted banter until he finally broached the topic of his return to teaching. "I want to get back into it, you know?" he confessed, the words tumbling out like a long-held secret. "I need to inspire students again, to awaken that part of myself." To his surprise, Miss Patterson leaned in, eyes brightening with interest. "I knew you'd come back to it. It never really left you, did it?" The validation felt electric, a feedback that propelled his confidence. They discussed available opportunities, challenges he might face, and new teaching methodologies that had emerged since his absence. Each suggestion from her felt like a stepping stone toward a revival he desperately sought. When they parted, Jake felt invigorated, buzzing with the possibilities that lay ahead. Yet, as he walked home, the weight of the ultimatum from his father loomed large once more. As he turned onto his street, a thought struck him with profound clarity. What if his father's hesitation masked a deeper insecurity? Was his own passion, now burning bright, igniting something profound within his family dynamic? The question gnawed at him as he entered the house, confronting the looming decision that could redefine not just his career but his relationship with the very people he loved. Tomorrow, the confrontation with his father would demand more than just passion, it would require a strategy. The stakes felt monumental because this time, it was not merely about voicing his desires. It was about crafting a narrative where he could authentically be himself, bringing his newfound clarity into a space that had come to define so much of his existence. As he lay in bed that night, he couldn't help but wonder if the next conversation would be a turning point not just for him, but for them all. Would his father's response spark acceptance, or ignite a deeper confrontation of values? He closed his eyes, readying himself for the storm to come, the tumultuous dialogue that would shape the rest of his journey. Jake awoke to the soft morning light filtering through his curtains, illuminating the room with a golden hue. His heart raced as he recalled the impending conversation with his father. Today wasn't just another day. It was a nexus of change, loaded with the risks of vulnerability and the promise of authenticity. He dressed quickly, a carefully curated ensemble that veiled his fraying confidence. The mirror reflected a facade he tried to project, a semblance of the teacher he aspired to be. Yet inside his stomach churned with worry. Would his father support his dreams, or would he dismiss them as misguided aspirations? As breakfast unfolded, the air was thick with an unspoken tension. Jake's mother bustled about, oblivious to the impending storm. His father quietly read the morning paper, completely absorbed, as if the printed words might shield him from the emotional deluge. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle upon him. "Dad, can we talk?" The words came out on a shallow exhale, tinged with nervous energy. His father looked up, brow furrowed. "Sure, Jake. What's on your mind?" Jake's palms were clammy as he contemplated the next hurdles he needed to leap. "I met with Miss Patterson, my old mentor," he began, the words spilling out. "I want to return to teaching. It's where I belong." The silence stretched, taut with unspoken objections. He watched his father's face, searching for clues between the lines. The initial response was a barely perceptible shift. "Teaching?" His father's tone was skeptical, a mix of disbelief and concern brewing in his eyes. "You mean to tell me you're going back to a career you walked away from? After everything we've invested?" Jake felt the heat prickling at the back of his neck. "This isn't just about the investment. It's about me. I need to be true to myself, Dad." His father leaned back, crossing his arms defensively. "You're throwing away stability for something uncertain. What will people think? Will you be able to provide for yourself?" The stakes were rising. Jake felt the impatience bubbling within him, mingling with the fear. "I can't let what people think dictate my life anymore. I need to pursue something that matters to me." His father scowled, frustration etching deeper lines onto his face. "Jake, I just want what's best for you. You're not a kid anymore, this is about your future." "That's the point," Jake interjected, anger and desperation blending into a single cry. "This is my future. It's about doing something that fuels my passion. You don't understand how it feels to wake up every day and feel lost." As the words echoed in the cramped space between them, silence cloaked them both. It was a silence laced with raw emotion, a confrontation not just of ideas but of identities. Jake realized he wasn't just fighting for his right to teach. He was battling for recognition of who he truly was beneath the expectations that burdened him. For a moment, his father's expression flickered, caught between pride and disbelief. Just as Jake thought the moment might shift, his father's phone rang, cutting through the tension. But the interruption felt like a reprieve for Jake. It was now, in this moment of silence, that he could plan his next move. He could almost hear the clock ticking in his mind. Time was running thin, and so was his patience. This conversation needed to reach a resolution not just for him but for his father as well. "After this call we'll talk more," his father said, the expectation lingering thick in the air. Jake nodded, but uncertainty gnawed at him. What if this moment of clarity dissolved into another cycle of doubt? As he turned to walk away, a pulse of determination surged within him. He needed to equip himself with a strategy. He had dammed up so much emotion. It was time to evaluate it carefully, like pieces of a puzzle. Facing his father might just be the initial step in a larger transformation. Though the conversation felt unfinished, Jake felt a flicker of hope. The next dialogue would revolve around clarity and commitment, a reaffirmation that he would stand firm in his passion no matter the cost. Tonight he would dig into his past, assembling arguments and fortifying his resolve. He would turn every doubt into a stepping stone, ensuring that when they faced each other again, he'd emerge victorious, not just for himself, but for both of them. What truths would he unearth from his past that could change the narrative of their future? The challenge only fueled his resolve, igniting the fire that would drive him forward. Jake sank into his worn desk chair, the afternoon sun slicing through the blinds like a spotlight illuminating the chaos of his mind. The events of the morning replayed in a relentless loop, a film of fear and defiance. Every word exchanged with his father anchored him deeper into his mission. He had to confront not just the doubt surrounding his goals, but the root of that doubt itself. He opened his laptop, the screen flickering to life, and began typing furiously. He revisited the moments in the classroom that ignited his passion for teaching, the spark when a hesitant student finally grasped a concept, the exhilaration of sharing knowledge that transformed lives. Each memory fueled his resolve, a collection of evidence for the argument he would make to his father. But this wasn't just about professional duty, it was personal. For years, he had prioritized expectations over his authentic self. With every keystroke, Jake discovered a deeper understanding of his own motivations. Why had he drifted away from teaching in the first place? The weight of parental expectations had dulled his instincts, pushing him into a corporate job that, while stable, felt like a plain gray canvas void of color. He recalled the vivid discussions with Miss Patterson, who had seen potential in him long before he could see it himself. She wasn't just a mentor. She had been a mirror, reflecting his true potential, shaping the educator he yearned to become. Was he allowing his father's reservations to cloud his vision? The prospect felt unsettling, yet liberating. The possibility of standing firm in his own truth became a guiding principle. Suddenly, in the midst of this introspection, chaos erupted in the living room. Jake's sister, Claire, was back from college, her laughter echoing through the hall. The sound pierced through his focused haze, diverting his thoughts. This was no ordinary visit. It was a family gathering, one that came with its own set of expectations. His gut twisted as he thought of how his father would weave them into a narrative of stability and success, praising Claire's achievements while subtly undermining his own aspirations. Jake felt the pressure mounting within him, an unresolved conflict threatening to boil over. Could he navigate his commitment to his dreams while facing the family dynamic that would inevitably challenge them? Resolved to confront this scenario head-on, he envisioned the upcoming conversation with his father. It needed to be more than just a defense of his choices. It had to be about fostering understanding between them. He would share the transformative experience teaching had been for him, the lives he could change. Each moment mapped out in his head became clearer, but uncertainty gnawed at the edges. Would he have the courage to articulate his truth in the presence of Claire, a potential source of judgment or perhaps unanticipated support? Motivated, Jake reached for the notebook where he jotted down points that needed addressing. But the most crucial point remained unaddressed: the importance of emotional vulnerability in this negotiation with his father. If he was resolute in his desire to remind his father of the son he once was, he had to balance conviction with empathy. As evening approached, he watched shadows lengthen across the floor, echoing the darkness of unresolved fears. But beneath the surface of doubt, a flicker of anticipation ignited. His palms trembled not just with anxiety, but with the hunger for liberation from the chains of expectation. He was on the precipice of a breakthrough, not just for him, but for his family as well. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of family. Jake inhaled deeply, summoning every ounce of courage he had steeled within him. Tonight it would begin. One conversation could shift the course of multiple lives. What would happen when he stepped into the storm of family expectations, armed solely with his truth? The reckoning loomed large, and he was ready to face the ultimate challenge: his father's skepticism matched against his newfound conviction. Would he emerge transformed, or would he retreat into the safety of silence once again? Jake's heart raced as he made his way to the living room, where laughter and chatter intertwined in a din he had long associated with family gatherings. He felt caught between two worlds: the comforting familiarity of his family and the suffocating expectations that came with it. The moment he stepped through the door, the cheerful ambience washed over him like a wave, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of anxiety. He greeted Claire, enveloped in the warmth of her smile and the playful teasing she threw his way. Yet, beneath that brotherly banter, Jake felt a familiar sting. She was thriving in college, her achievements a spotlight that only served to amplify his insecurities. Would his father, perched in his usual spot at the center of familial pride, dismiss his ambitions once again? As the evening unfolded, Jake engaged in small talk, every laugh shared feeling like a paradox. Here was a family that rallied around Claire as though she were an untouchable star. Meanwhile, he sat at the edge of the festivities, a mere observer. Deep down, he knew he could not hide behind the mere innocence of sibling rivalry forever. The inkling of his upcoming conversation with his father loomed larger with every moment of complacency. His father arrived at the gathering with boisterous energy. Praise for Claire flowed effortlessly, while Jake felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest. The stakes had never been clearer. Would he allow fear to dictate the narrative this evening? Only a single conversation stood between him and the culmination of years of buried aspirations. With every toast, every shout of joy emanating from his father, Jake plotted out the precise moment he would seize control of this family narrative. The turning point arrived when Claire stepped away for a moment, concocting some drink, leaving him alone in the presence of their father. Jake. His father beckoned, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Have you thought more about that business proposition I mentioned? I really think you should take a look at it. The air thickened. Here it was. The dangerous path he had instinctively skirted for years. It was a golden opportunity dressed in the familiar guise of stability. But Jake felt an indignant fire flare up within his core. Time stood still. Jake had to respond. Dad, he started, voice shaking but steadied by resolve. I need to talk to you about something that's more important to me than a corporate ladder. His father's brow furrowed inquisitively, the laughter of the gathering fading into a low hum in the background. Are you serious? Because I've never seen you so enthusiastic about something. Jake inhaled deeply, gathering the words that had eluded him for years. I want to be a teacher, Dad. I want to go back to that. It's where my heart is. The room's atmosphere shifted. A pendulum swing that felt both exhilarating and catastrophic. He barely processed his father's expression, a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. He realized how vulnerable he had become, laying his truths bare on the brink of familial judgment. Teaching. His father's voice was flat, laced with disbelief. Is that really what you want? A life of uncertainty? But before he could spiral into old doubts, Jake stood his ground. Yes, Dad. It is. Every syllable was imbued with desperation and fervor, marking the first time he was speaking not just to his father, but to himself. Seeing the sheer bewilderment in his father's eyes, Jake felt the rush of liberation coursing through him. The confrontation was both thrilling and terrifying. The moment was more profound than he could have imagined. As he moved through the conversation, he noticed a gentle shift. His father's voice softened, curiosity creeping beneath layers of skepticism. For the first time, Jake believed that his father might hear him, not just listen. However, even as sparks of understanding flickered between them, Claire returned, her laughter piercing through the tension. It felt like a reset button had been pressed, the stakes momentarily blurred as their family dynamic threatened to reinforce old patterns. Jake's heart thudded heavily in his chest. The foundation had begun to shift, but would he be able to hold on to this newfound ground amidst the clutter of expectations? What if this conversation could cascade into deeper truths among them? And more importantly, could he remain steadfast as the night unfolded? Or would he once again retreat into silence, allowing their tightly woven narrative to swallow him whole? The laughter around him felt distant, almost muffled as Jake continued to navigate the terrifying landscape of his reality. Claire was back, and the family chatter surged like a tidal wave, threatening to drown out his hard-won conviction. The warmth of their banter contrasted sharply with the ice forming around his stomach. How could he maintain this fragile momentum? He forced himself to listen as the conversation shifted back to Claire's achievements. Each anecdote punctuated with laughter felt like another layer of pressure. Jake increasingly felt like a ghost at his own family gathering, haunting the edges of their joy. Yet beneath the suffocating anxiety lay a spark, one he had to keep flickering. Jake, you should really ask Claire how she pulled those grades, his mother chimed in, her voice echoing with unintentional pressure. Maybe you could learn something from her. It struck like a bowstring snapping. Jake's cheeks flushed with frustration. This wasn't he about the comparison, but his voice seemed to fade amidst the robust din of approval surrounding Claire. Words bubbled up, threatening to spill over. But the very thought of reinforcing a narrative of failure tied his tongue. Instead, he processed. He had stepped forward with boldness earlier. Perhaps he could do it again. With every minute that ticked by, Jake's palms clutched the edge of the chair, wrestling with the realities of his ambition against the shadow of doubt. As Claire animatedly recounted her experiences, a kernel of a plan slowly crept into his mind. What if he voiced not only his desire to teach but also his fears and uncertainties? What if he transformed this moment of familial oblivion into a broader dialogue, not just with his father but for everyone, including himself? Claire, he interrupted unexpectedly, his voice rising above the murmur. The room swung to a halt. All eyes turned toward him, Claire's surprised expression appearing both bewildered and intrigued. With everything you're doing in school, what do you think makes it all worthwhile? He challenged her in a way. Even he was surprised by the audacity of his question. Claire paused, caught off guard. I don't know, getting good grades? Making my parents proud? Jake didn't he know where he found the courage to go on, but it felt crucial. But what about happiness? What about doing something you really care about? The tension shifted again, but this time toward introspection. Claire's smile wavered as she considered his words, and Jake continued, emboldened. I've realized I can't just follow expectations. I want to make an impact on people's lives, not just paycheck numbers. An ember of determination sparked in the room, igniting glimmers of thought. His father's expression shifted slightly, as if processing the very essence of what Jake was arguing. Is teaching really your next step? His father asked carefully, the initial disbelief softer yet still tangible. With the spotlight suddenly back on him, Jake's heart raced, but his determination surged. Yes, and maybe it's not a traditional path, but it's where my growth begins. What felt daunting only moments ago now appeared doable. The lecture about stability faded, and in its place blossomed a conversation that could change everything. However, the moment didn't last. Claire broke the brief silence, trying to regain control of the discussion, and the conversation returned to familiar territory. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him, uncertain if he had truly made headway or merely intensified the internal conflict beneath the surface. He could recoil into silence again, but lingering whispers of courage began to form a strategy in his mind. If he could confront Claire and even his father in this way around his aspirations, could he share his views beyond tonight, challenge their long-held perspectives? As the evening wore on, distractions pulled him in multiple directions, but Jake felt a burgeoning resolve. He wouldn't let outdated expectations dictate his future. He wanted to face the world on his terms. But as he absorbed the fallout of the dynamic conversations that followed, Jake was acutely aware of how quick family expectations could shatter his progress. The room filled with laughter again. Yet Jake sensed a predator lurking, disappointment or fierce protection of personal visions. What would happen if this resolve was tested? The next encounter loomed ominously, one that could either secure his path or hurl him back into constraints he pushed against. As voices rose with laughter in his family gathering, Jake knew the time would soon come for his next confrontation, a moment where he would need to fully put his personal development to the ultimate test. Would he rise to the occasion or slip back into silence once more? The night of the rehearsal dinner arrived with a heavy heart and a hopeful spirit. Jake stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at his reflection with fierce determination. The weight of expectations bore down on him. The quiet resolve to pursue teaching was now tangled with the familial obligations of the evening. He had made a promise to himself. Tonight would be the culmination of his transformational journey. As he entered the hall filled with family and laughter, he could feel the familiar pull of judgment and expectation that seemed to permeate every gathering. His father and mother were already settled, exchanging pleasantries with relatives who gushed over Lily's upcoming wedding. Jake took a deep breath, reminding himself of the support he had cultivated from conversations with Miss Patterson and his mother. They had urged him to embrace authenticity, and tonight, he would hold on to that. The evening unfolded amid a flurry of affectionate toasts and family banter. When the moment came for speeches, Jake's heart raced. He glanced at his father, who beamed with pride as he recounted tales of his children. But as laughter erupted from a particularly humorous story, Jake realized that he couldn't remain in the shadows any longer. This was his time to shine without the dimming light of expectation. Summoning courage, Jake stood up, clearing his throat. "Excuse me, everyone." Silence blanketed the room, punctuated only by the crisp clink of glasses. "I would like to say a few words." His father's expression shifted, concern shadowing his features while Lily shot him an encouraging grin. "You have the floor, Jake," his father said. But a flicker of anxiety lay beneath the surface. Jake pressed on, an electric energy surging within him. "I want to start by saying how proud I am of Lily as she steps into this new chapter," he said, the familial warmth evident but quickly shifting toward a more profound undertone. "But I also want to acknowledge something that has been weighing heavily on my heart." The air crackled with anticipation. Everyone waited with bated breath as Jake gathered his thoughts. "For too long, I've followed expectations that didn't reflect who I truly am. I want to teach again. I want to inspire students, to share knowledge, and to find fulfillment in a role that allows me to impact lives positively." A rumble of murmuring spread through the gathering, and Jake glanced at his father. He initially saw disbelief harden into concern, then shift to intrigue. He pressed forward, fueled by conviction. "Teaching has been my passion, the very essence of my being, and I refuse to let fear of judgment snuff out that flame." The weight of silence felt profound, as if familial expectations were hanging in the balance. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, but amidst it all, he felt liberated. The room remained still, absorbing the sincerity of his words. "Dad," he continued, voice steady, "I know you worry about me, about stability. But I've realized that true satisfaction resides in pursuing what brings joy to my life. This isn't a rejection of family. It's an invitation to embrace who I am." Jake felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air, thick with tension, began to dissolve. His father's brows furrowed, but he also leaned in, seemingly searching for the understanding his son was offering. "If teaching brings me happiness, then isn't that truly what matters? I'm not only responsible for supporting Lily, I'm also responsible for pursuing my dreams." The moment stretched as time suspended its march. And then, in a voice steadied by resolve, Jake said, "I hope we can navigate this together. Because I don't wish to live my life in opposition to this family. I wish to forge my path with your understanding." His father's expression began to soften. He took a moment to process. The room exhaled, a collective relief mingling with Jake's fervent hope. "I can't say I fully understand," his father finally spoke, a hint of vulnerability and pride emerging simultaneously, "but I see your conviction, Jake. And you deserve to be happy in your life. Might not support this completely yet, but I will think about what you've said." Jake felt a wave of validation wash over him. His father's response could have gone so differently. He remained rooted, standing tall, at last expressing the authenticity he so desperately wanted to embrace. The shift had begun. A pathway toward understanding and acceptance burgeoned before him. As the evening continued, laughter and celebration erupted again, a mixture of joy and relief mingling in the air. Yet Jake felt transformed by a powerful realization. The moment had solidified a critical truth within him. A hard-won personal achievement that transcended any past doubts now defined him. He was no longer merely a mechanic caught in the gear of familial expectations. He emerged as someone willing to redefine the very fabric of his identity. Wrapping up the discussion, he caught a glimpse of potential not just for himself, but for his family's dynamics as they adapted to embrace a broader understanding of individuality. This was more than a conversation about teaching. It was the unveiling of his authentic self. There was still work ahead, but the freedom he felt energized him. He felt validated, recognized, and competent in voicing his aspirations. Known now not just as Jake's son or brother, but as the teacher he aspired to be, a culmination of personal growth that promised an exciting journey ahead. And amid the laughter and joy of the gathering, Jake resolved to continue his path, ready to embrace whatever challenges awaited him. Now is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this content thriving. Comment with your reactions and theories about Jake's remarkable journey. We want to know how it resonated with you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-changing conclusion.